Yo, what's going on, snipers, and welcome back to our Edmonton Oilers Throwback 2010 franchise mode here in NHL 25. So last episode, if you did not catch it, we continued to simulate, and I think our team has kind of been improving steadily throughout the season. We are 24, 31, and 8, so definitely not going to be making the playoffs, which is good. And obviously, like I said, we have been steadily improving in some areas. Like, obviously, we've been giving up a bit more goals as of late because obviously our offense has been getting better, but at least our offense is getting better. We also are still very good on the penalty kill, which is still a big surprise, but in general, been pretty happy with how the season's played out for the most part. Especially one line, that being the second line with Cameron and Dadonov, and I think the other one is Nyquist. Trying to remember who else is on that line. Yeah, I think it's Nyquist, or maybe it's Jankomov's, but one of the two. It's probably Jankomov's based on the plus minus. But anyways, yeah, that second line's been really good for us this season so far, which has been fantastic to see. We are still thinking about potentially trading Evgeny Dadonov here at this trade deadline, though, because he is a pending free agent, and I'm not too sure if he's really in the long-term picture for this team. We could probably find somebody in the draft, or somebody like Tyler Toffoli could eventually be just as good as Dadonov, so maybe we don't hold on to Dadonov much longer, but hopefully Cameron still manages to produce well because he's done fantastic this season to lead the team. Nathan McKinnon's been pretty solid too, but he is a minus 26, so you can see pretty much every line on this team has been absolutely destroyed plus minus wise except for that second line. So as long as we can continue to assimilate decently, hopefully that line kind of just stays the same even without Dadonov if we trade him. If the other lines are not doing well, though, that is not a great thing, because it looks like Nyquist by the end of the season could be like a minus 40 something, so we are still kind of like definitely not a great team in an entire league, but I do think that this team is getting closer and closer to being a playoff team. It's just going to take obviously the right prospects to develop at the right time and for us to continue developing the guys we already have. So I've been impressed so far. Definitely still work to go, but definitely striding in the right direction. But anyways, before we get into the 2030 trade deadline, which would be technically the 2015 trade deadline, let's get in your guys' comments, see what you guys have to say about last episode, and then we'll explore some potential trades, and we will also see how our team finishes off the 2014-15 season. So the first and only comment is from Sour Taku, says, with all the prospects likely to make the NHL next season, getting rid of Dadonov along with most of your current bottom six makes sense. Trade Dadonov now should get you a good return. Everyone else could walk in free agency. So he's basically saying that right now we should probably trade Dadonov, which is what we were thinking of doing anyways. And then basically he says the bottom six could be pretty much reworked in the offseason by letting people go, which I kind of agree with. I think guys like Nazem Kadri don't need to be coming back to this team. Obviously, Burmistrov and Marcoux, I think, should still come back to this team for sure going forward. Marcoux especially, obviously, because he's pretty good. He just needs to get maybe an elevated role a little bit. Guys like Carl Hagelin could probably be replaced in the offseason. Same with Abdelkader. Toffoli probably should be in a top six role, which is where we might end up getting him in for where Dadonov currently is. So once we move Dadonov potentially here at the deadline, Toffoli moving up might not be a bad idea. But yeah, the bottom six and a lot of guys that are currently in the AHL might be let go of, so we can kind of rework it a bit, because we do have a lot of players in the minors that are pretty much close to NHL ready. So a lot of those guys could fit into our bottom six right away next season if we readjust it accordingly. So with that said, let's go back and explore some trades for Evgeny Dadonov before we hop into the deadline, just to make it a little bit easier for us. And then we'll still pop into the deadline just to kind of see if there's any potential trades also we could explore. But I think Dadonov's like really the only one that I want to kind of flip away here this season, because obviously we don't want to be below the cap floor too much. And moving away somebody like Dadonov is probably going to be the easiest thing for us to do. So let's see what we could potentially get for him. I think when I went to the trade finder, actually, it wasn't super crazy, the offers, but it's either we basically get something from now or he potentially walks in free agency. So let's go back to the trade finder. What was the offers again that we were getting offered in the last episode? Okay, these ones we might actually look into some of these ones instead of actually making our own trade. Atlanta would be willing to give us a second and a sixth round pick. That's not too bad. There is that Sharma deal that we were mentioning, but we don't really need forward prospects, especially with how many good players we have in the minors right now. So I'm not going to think about that one from Boston. Buffalo, 2 third-round picks is kind of intriguing. I think they are a solid team at this point, still making the playoffs and all that, so I don't really know if I would accept that type of one, but 2 third-round picks is definitely kind of nice, but a second and a sixth is pretty close in comparison in terms of value, I feel like. Aside from that, Marc-Antoine Pouliot, we don't need. A second and a third from the Carolina Hurricanes. I feel like Carolina has been not super good so far in this franchise mode, but I can't remember where they've finished in terms of the standings. Aside from that, Colorado would be willing to give us a second and Axelson as a medium 9. Like I said, we don't really need forward prospects, so not going to even look at that one. Or even this one, even though that is a top 6 forward prospect in a third. We don't need forward prospects whatsoever, so I'm not going to really entertain those type of deals. Florida would be willing to give us a third and a third when they really just traded us Dadonov last season, which is kind of funny. Then there's Minnesota, a second and a sixth. Second and a third from Montreal is kind of nice, to be honest, but Montreal should be a good team at this point. There's Pritchett in a second, not going to entertain that. Either this Cox deal. We don't need Craig Anderson. We don't need those 2 fourth-rounders. A second and a third from the Devils isn't bad, but they're good at this point. Second and Coleman, don't need forwards. Cuff in a third, don't need a prospect forward again. Second and a third from the Penguins. The Penguins are really good this season, don't really need those type of valued picks. Arkhipov is actually in their lineup, so this one actually could make maybe more sense, but Arkhipov is basically going to be taking a roster spot from somebody that could be in the minors, so I don't know if it's really something I'd look into. I'm trying to think. I don't even know if Pittsburgh would be cap compliant with a deal like that. Because that third-round pick is going to be a late third-round pick, but Arkhipov is playing currently in the NHL right now, so that could be interesting. But like I said, there's a lot of guys in the AHL anyways that could take that spot eventually, like next season, so it's probably not worth it. And then the second and a third from the Canucks are doing a lot better this season, so it doesn't really make sense to deal with them. So I'm probably leaning towards like maybe this Carolina one, a second and a third, because I don't think Carolina's doing too well this season. They are also a team that has lost a lot of good players, I think, since I think they still have like Eric Stahl and all that, but I feel like they're not as good as they used to be. 2 third-rounders from the Panthers would be interesting, but obviously they just literally traded us Dadonov last season, so I don't think it makes really much sense for them to trade back for him again. So I think the deal we're going to be doing, since a lot of them involve prospects and stuff like that, which we don't need, it's probably going to come down to the Buffalo one or Carolina, and I think Buffalo's better than Carolina right now, so I'm going to look into this Carolina one and see what Carolina's looking like on the standings. Yeah, see, they're 26, 32, and 6. Now, these picks are for next year's draft, so not this upcoming year's draft, but they probably should be much better at this point next season, my guess. So I think, yeah, we're going to do this deal with the Carolina Hurricanes. We're going to send Evgeny Dadonov to the Carolina Hurricanes, get ourselves back a second and a third-round pick. Is it going to be the best players in the world? Maybe not, but they could be low-elite players too. So let's send him to Carolina, and we'll take back some prospects potentially if we end up using those picks at all. If we don't use those picks, we could always trade them instead and get somebody good with it, but Dadonov on his way to Carolina. He's had a good season here, but it just makes sense for us to flip him at this point. So that means we have a roster spot open for another depth forward on this team, which I guess technically the best one would probably be to take up Hodgson from the AHL to the NHL, just because he's probably another guy we could look to flip at the deadline. So we'll just call up Hodgson for the time being, and then we will readjust the AHL lines accordingly. But let's let's see. Who do I want to put into that top 6? Because that line's been really good so far this season, so maybe Tyler Toffoli would be what I want to do here. So let's get Toffoli on that left wing on that second line. We will probably move Kadri over to the right side, and then move Hagelin to the third line. And then fourth line, who do we have scratched? We have Hodgson, we have Crombeen, and we have Riley Nash. Damn, why do we have so many scratches? Oh yeah, because I guess one's a forward that should be actually in the lineup. So we'll get Abdelkader over there. Marcoux should probably be higher in the lineup though than Hagelin, maybe actually for that matter. You know what, actually I'm going to get Hagelin on the fourth line here. And we'll go back to Hagelin on this side, Abdelkader on the right side. And we'll put Hodgson down the middle between them. And that should be good. That way we get Marcoux some more ice time, because I think Marcoux is an important prospect to develop for this team. Okay, so that should be pretty much good. We also need to readjust the power play lines. So since we just got rid of Dadonov, who needs power play time that should get power play time? Nyquist already has power play time, I'm pretty sure. McKinnon does, Cameron does, Jakimov should. Marcoux should. Does Kadri have any power play time? He does. Okay, same with Marcoux. So I guess we'll go to right side. Eberle and Toffoli definitely do. I guess we could put another defenseman on this unit too, which we right now only just have Zherdev on there. So I guess on the second power play unit, we should put one of our younger defensemen like Justin Falk. I don't even know why Falk wasn't even on the power play to begin with. So yeah, let's get Justin Falk onto this second unit here. And that's probably the replacement we needed to make. But yeah, hopefully this helps out our offense a little bit. I know it won't hurt. It will probably hurt us a little bit getting rid of Dadonov, but I think Falk, obviously, it should help his development more being on the power play and all that. So that's probably our only trade we're going to make this season. Now, there's a chance still that we could trade away Hodgson, but we might just hold on to him for the season. We'll move Boone Jenner to the top line in the AHL, Lander up a line, same with PayRV. And in this fourth line center spot, I guess I'll throw Legwand into the lineup, and we'll move Shaw to center because Shaw can win faceoff. So there you go. Our AHL team is still stacked as hell, even with Hodgson in the NHL instead. So I don't think we're going to make any more trades this season probably, but we're still going to jump into the trade deadline just to take a look quickly, see what's out there, but I don't think we're going to make any more trades. I think that's the only one we wanted to make, and we're still above the floor, which is nice, basically because of the Crombeen deal we did in a couple episodes ago, so we don't have to worry about being below the floor, which is kind of nice. Alright, so that's all dealt with, which is fantastic. Let's advance a day into the trade deadline and see just what the big names are that are out there. We'll go as a seller just to kind of see if there's any offers that are actually thrown at us at this deadline or not. Alright, so the big name players on the block, Stephen Weiss. There's Antoine Vermette, David Perron. That's not bad actually for a 26-year-old, but obviously we're not looking to bring people in right now, but still. Some decent players on the block, it looks like. Macaulay Kalak, Jason Pominville, and Jacob Voracek at 25 years old. But, yeah, he's making a lot of money, and then he's a free agent at the end of the year. Jonathan Bernier is on the block. Keith Yandel. There could be some interesting moves this year for sure in terms of trades. So I think that's the only trade we're going to make. So let's exit out of this deadline. We just briefly wanted to take a look at it. And let's see if there's been any crazy movement in the NHL in 2014-15, like a trade that we were not expecting. Samuel Lepisto's on waivers. I don't think I need him. He's probably pretty old at this point. Yeah, he's 30 years old and he's 76. Solid offensive defenseman for the AHL, but doesn't do much at the NHL level. And I forgot that we actually even had him already in this franchise mode, to be honest, but we had him for 7 games a couple years ago. Yeah, I completely forgot that we actually had him on this team. That's kind of strange. Alright, so for the 2014-15 trade deadline, let's see what blockbusters went down, if there's been any crazy trades that we were not expecting to see. So the first trade listed, New Jersey acquires a third, Trevor Smith, I think that is, and Kent Huskins from Phoenix. Phoenix gets back a second and a seventh, so not a huge trade there, just New Jersey adding more depth, which kind of makes sense. Colorado gets David Desharnais and a third-round pick from the Sharks. The Sharks get back some prospects that are generated. All right. Phoenix and New Jersey also made another trade earlier, apparently. So you see Phoenix acquired a second and a seventh from New Jersey. New Jersey gets back Trevor Daley, a fourth-round pick, and David Schlemko. So, yeah, New Jersey's loading up. They got now 3 new defensemen at that deadline and a forward. So maybe New Jersey's trying to get back to the finals again like they were a couple years ago. Aside from that, the Ottawa Senators acquire a third in Steve Ott and a 6th-round pick from Anaheim. Anaheim gets back 2 generated prospects. Okay. Boston gets Keith Yandel and Aaron Johnson. That's interesting. Keith Yandel going to the Bruins. I feel like he's from Massachusetts, right? If I remember right. So if it is the case, then that's kind of neat that he goes to Boston. So the return on that is that elite prospect that we saw that isn't going to develop. So the Coyotes got a little bit shafted. They didn't really get a good return for Keith Yandel. They think that Mikanov guy could still be really good. I don't think he's going to, because he was like in the 60 overall range at 22 as a medium elite. So that is a bad deal probably for the Yotes. I mean, he could still develop maybe, but I don't know if he's going to have a chance, really. But Yandel goes to the Bruins. It is a rental deal, probably. So, I mean, Yandel could sign somewhere else in the offseason, and then it's kind of an even deal. But that's kind of interesting. Aside from that, San Jose acquires a second rounder and some guy named Zachary Hay. Calgary gets back Jack Hillen and Kevin Klein. So the Flames getting some more defensive help. Pittsburgh acquires Ville Leno, a fourth, and Dan Sexton from Anaheim. Anaheim gets back that Arkhipov guy we were looking at, and also some guy named Pascal Beaufait. So some younger forward prospects and defensive prospects for the Ducks. Pittsburgh obviously adding Leno, which also will help even more so with that crazy team that they have right now. Detroit getting two prospects, Brett Pesce and Derek Pouliot. And then Vancouver gets back Eric Christensen, Chris Phillips, and Marcel Gotch. So Detroit's offloading a lot of players. Detroit's definitely in full rebuild now at this point. And Vancouver starting to load up for a potential playoff run. Montreal gets Bear Jackman and Paul Kariya from Anaheim. So Paul Kariya didn't last long back in Anaheim, which is unfortunately not the case. I thought he was going to retire as a Duck, but it did not happen. So he's going to go to Montreal and have a chance to maybe go win a Stanley Cup there instead. And Anaheim gets back a second, a fourth, and some guy named Aston. All right. Rangers get James Wisniewski, a fifth, and Freddie Meyer from the Ducks. The Ducks get back some guy named Wheel, which I think is a top 6 forward prospect, and 2 second-round picks. So the Rangers loading up for a potential playoff run as well. They have been very good this season, and Wisniewski kind of helps solidify that blue line a little bit. Nashville gets back Chad LaRose, a fourth and a seventh from Dallas. Dallas gets back that top 6 forward prospect that had 3 points in 3 games, Jamie Cox, and a 5th-round pick. All right. Philadelphia gets some guy named Braxton Cuff and also Matt Murray, goalie prospect Matt Murray. So they both go to Philadelphia from Ottawa. Ottawa gets back JVR, a fourth, and Adam McQuaid. Interesting deal for the Sens. I think that's definitely a helpful deal at this point. They get rid of 2 solid prospects, I guess. And then Ottawa gets young JVR, which, I mean, they could re-sign easily in the offseason. They also get Adam McQuaid and that 4th-round pick. And then lastly, there is our trade, which involves Dadonov. So not a hugely busy trade deadline. Some substantial deals, I think, for the teams that are going far this year. So obviously, I still think the Rangers, the Penguins, those type of teams are definitely the favorites just because of how crazy they've simulated up to this point in this 2014-15 season. So with that said, let's continue to simulate the rest of the season, and let's hope that that second line still does decently without Dadonov. Hopefully, Toffoli could fit in there nicely, because that's likely where I'd like to slot him in potentially next season as a full-on replacement for Dadonov. So let's go a couple weeks at a time. We know we're not going to be a playoff team at this point, but we might as well kind of still take the rest of the season a little bit slower and just see what ends up happening. We do beat the Sharks to start off this episode, and then we lost to the Kings. St. Louis, we lose to them as well, but only by 1 goal. We lose to the Kings again. Tampa, we win 7-4. Nice victory there. Calgary's a shootout loss, so not a bad little stretch, but not a great stretch either. But we're not trying to anyways make the playoffs, so it doesn't matter too much at this point. But let's get the rest of March done. Colorado in back-to-back games, even though they are 4 or 5 days apart. Goddamn, 3-2 loss there. They have been a good team this year. And that is going to be a win. So we actually beat them, and then we lost to a bad team in Detroit. Lose to Ottawa in overtime. Beat St. Louis by a score of 2-1. San Jose, as Phoenix has fired their head coach. Makes sense. San Jose, 7-2 loss. We do beat the Ducks, though, 6-4. So we're 30-37-10. Very good to see that this team's able to still get to 30 wins, though, with this type of roster. Like, we're definitely not going to be the worst team in the league, but we're definitely not going to be the best team by far either. We're probably going to be like a team that finishes like with a top 10 selection. Obviously, if the draft lottery is in our favor, maybe we'll move up more. But we could still try and move up more in this draft if we really want to. But let's get the last 5 games done. Nashville to start it off. Then we got LA, Atlanta, Boston, and LA. Again, we beat Nashville. LA, we lose 4-2. Atlanta is going to be a 6-3 win. Nice. Boston is a 4-2 loss. And the last game of the season is a 5-3 loss. We finish off the season 32-40-10. I'd say that's better than I was expecting from this team. So I am pretty impressed with that. Obviously, we should be a pretty low team in the standings, but that's not too bad. Not too bad at all. I will definitely take that. So Let's hide the stats here for a second because we are going to go to the standings and I don't want to see any player stats or anything like that. So boom, there we go. All right, so in terms of the entire league, where did we finish? We finished as, pretty much exactly where I was anticipating. We finished as the 23rd worst team in the league, so technically we do have a top 10 pick this year in this draft, which is good. Obviously could have been better, but yeah, we didn't do too bad, I would say, this year. We definitely could have been even better if we would have got off to a better start, but I think we were a lot better in like the last 2/3 of the season rather than the first third. So in terms of goals for per game, where did we finish? Not very good. So our offense was definitely one of our downfalls still, but at least it wasn't dead last. In terms of goals against per game, we were pretty much right around the same category. So no real big drastic stat, probably other than our penalty kill, my guess, right? 16.1% on the power play isn't terrible. So our power play might have gotten better after the trade deadline, potentially, which is nice. And in our penalty kill, surprisingly, was still second best in the entire league, despite every other stat being pretty bad. So, hey, good penalty killing team. That's good to see. At least maybe that means in the future our team will be pretty good in that area as well. We had 7 short-handed goals still this year as well. So maybe a big year for Marcoux on the penalty killing unit. 16, 19, and 6 on home ice. 16, 21, and 4 on the road. All right. Not too bad. Obviously, we know our AHL team should be playoff bound as well. Let's see this. If we go to entire league. And yes, they did. So yeah, we finished as a 6-best team in the AHL, which is good. So hopefully those young guys get a good run. But in terms of the entire league, if you guys wanted to know these stats, the Pittsburgh Penguins obviously win the President's Trophy 65-14-3 season for the Penguins. And then the Rangers were behind them by 13 points with a 56-18-8 record. So the Penguins, I think that's a pretty close to being a historic season, if I'm not mistaken. Let me actually look up the best regular seasons all time again. Best NHL seasons all time. Let's see. Best NHL seasons of all time. The most wins in a season. Yeah, this is tied for the most wins in a season the Pittsburgh Penguins just got. Tied with the Boston Bruins from obviously 2023, which obviously in this universe wouldn't have happened yet. So we could say that's a record, I guess, at this point. But on points percentage, the best points percentage all time was an 825 points percentage back in 1977 by the Montreal Canadiens. If we go here, the points percentage by the Penguins is less than that. It's an 81.8. So they are very close to being one of the best teams of all time, though. Top 3, at least. So that's pretty crazy. Who is the best offensive team? Pittsburgh. Not a surprise. The best defensive team was the Rangers, though. That's kind of surprising. So yeah, it will be interesting to see who ends up winning the cup out of those teams. I feel like it's got to come down to those teams. It could be randomly the Chicago Blackhawks again, though, so don't count them out. Best power play team in 2015 is going to be the Washington Capitals. Not really surprised with Ovechkin being on it. And the penalty kill is going to be the Calgary Flames of all teams. So us in Calgary were the best teams on the penalty kill, which is interesting. So I guess there's something in the water in Alberta that makes us good penalty kill teams. And look at that. Our point leader to lead the team is going to be Cameron. 71 points for Cameron this year in 2015. Huge increase over everybody else. He had way more points than McKinnon, I'd say. 10, 11, 12 more points. I don't even know the math, man. But yeah, that's a huge increase. And he was also plus throughout the rest of the season still. So a big year for Cameron. And maybe this guy could be a future captain of this team at some point. Yes, he's definitely taken that next step. 2 shorthanded goals from him as well. Good face-off stats. Throws a lot of hits. Has a lot of takeaways. Yeah, I'm really liking Cameron. I'm glad that we locked him up when we did because I think he would cost a lot more money this offseason than what we paid him. But McKinnon on 59 points, minus 31. Solid season again for Nathan McKinnon. Less points than his rookie year, which is a bit strange. But obviously our team was a little bit maybe worse than last year on paper. It's tough to say, but I do think McKinnon will improve as it goes on. He's up to an overall now? An 89, so should be no problem for him to get better and better each season. Jankumov's hit 34 goals this year next to Cameron, so we probably got to keep Cameron and Jankumov's together, it seems like, at this rate 56 points and a plus 12. That's a big increase for Jakumovs. 10 more goals and almost 20 more points. Like that. Kadri on 35 points isn't bad, but obviously we're probably going to look to replace him in the offseason because 12 of those points were on the power play, so I don't know if he's going to be here much longer. Marcoux on 15 goals, 31 points. Not bad for Marcoux. Obviously a good two-way forward. He's going to need a contract this offseason. And yeah, he had some power play points, 8 power play points, and those 3 shorthanded goals. So solid player all around. And Burmistrov on 31 points is pretty solid. Hodgson had 8 and 19 since getting called up. So useful player on that bottom 6. And in Nash with nothing. Left wing side of things, Nyquist 58 points is really good, but minus 36 obviously isn't. But the Goose is taking that next step, which is good. Love to see it. Hagelin 26 points, Abdelkader 16. Both guys probably gone this offseason to be honest. Eberle 49 points, minus 28. Maybe a bit of a down year for Eberle. Yeah, I think he's kind of not doing as much as I was anticipating. He is still a consistent 20 goal guy. But yeah, definitely dropped off in production a bit. His plus minus is getting worse and worse every year. But we definitely hope that he could get more growth as his career goes on. He's only 24, so maybe a couple more years of growth. And then Tyler Toffoli, 45 points in 80 games. How did he do really since getting promoted to that second line? Looks like he did relatively good, at least in the last 5 games or so. 5 to 6 games, I should say. So that's good. But yeah, obviously his plus minus is pretty bad. But a good season from Toffoli. Crombie on those 4 points in 6 games is pretty funny. From a defensive standpoint, Falk on 29 points. Only 2 power play points, but he was put on the power play kind of late. 27 points for Petrie. No power play time, though. Zherdev on 21 points, Russell 16, Halinka on 11, Savard on 7, and Plant on 1. The best defenseman I would say on our team was probably Petrie, just based on the plus-minus, because he had actually an okay plus-minus, and then his point totals were not too much off of Falk's. From a goaltending perspective, Vasilevsky posted a 903. I'd say that save percentage is respectable for this team. Goals against average and stuff on both these goalies are pretty bad, but I do expect him to get better once this team's actually better defensively in front of them. Aside from that, let's take a look at stats around the league. We know that it was a Pittsburgh Penguins show last time we looked, so let's see about that again. And it pretty much stayed the same. Malkin finishes with 151 points, so 84 goals in 82 games. Absolutely insane. Crosby finishes with 140. Then behind that, you have Alex Semin with 132, 63 goals. Justin Williams fell off a little bit, but he finishes with 131. So Pittsburgh and Washington looking pretty deadly. You also have Henrik Sedin, Kopitar, Nick Backstrom, and Ilya Kovalchuk up there. But a lot of high-end scorers this year. A lot of 60-goal guys, including Jerome McGinley, who went to Vancouver this season. So Jerome McGinley got dealt for pretty much not a lot. Other than technically, I guess, Alex Edler. But still, 60 goals in his first season in Vancouver. And he could be retiring at the end of this year. So that's a pretty nice addition for the Vancouver Canucks to help them get back to that playoff race, I guess. Aside from that, defensively, the best defenseman for points this year was Drew Doughty. The real Drew Doughty, that is, not the generated one. 72 points, plus 21. Nice. Aside from that, John Carlson up there with 67 points. Voinov with 66, same with Ryan Whitney. Duncan Keith up there. Pretty solid. Dmitry Orlov already up there, damn. So the Caps have a lot of high-end offensive defensemen because, I mean, Carlson's up there. They had Mike Green in the first few years. Dmitry Orlov is getting a lot of points in this universe. The Kings also have, like, Doughty and Voinov. So there's a lot of teams that have some good defensemen on them. Aside from that, goaltending-wise, most wins was Marc-Andre Fleury with 49 wins this year. Most shutouts was Fleury and Crawford. Best save percentage by a starter was Marc-Andre Fleury. It might be Fleury's Vezina this season. It might be, and he's a pending free agent, I think, too. And he's also number 1 in goals against per game as well. Wow. All right. So, Marc-Andre Fleury, Vezina trophy winning goalie probably this season, and like I said, pending free agent, so I wonder if Pittsburgh's going to be able to afford to bring him back, because if they're not, Marc-Andre Fleury could be a free agent this upcoming offseason, and who the hell knows where he would sign, but that's pretty cool. So, shout out to Fleury. Any goalie goals this season? No goalie goals, unfortunately. Most assists, though. is going to be Ullmark and Niemi with 5 assists apiece. Ullmark, as a 20-year-old, put up 5 assists. And he's already a starting goalie in Tampa. Or he's almost close to being a starting goalie in Tampa. So shout out to Linus Ullmark. So there's that. Best rookie this season. It's going to be Rickard Rakell, 45 points. So Rickard Rakell is going to be your your Calder winner, which is an interesting one. All right, he beats out a couple of generated guys as well as Andre Palat, Marcus Granlund? No, Mikhail Granlund. Damn, he made it at 23. Huh, okay. All right, not too bad. Burmistrov was a top 10 rookie this year, so that's also good to see for us. All right, so with that said, now the question is who is going to win the Stanley Cup? Let's first look at the playoff bracket, though, for 2014-15 once we get this simulated done. There we go. Because I am curious on the playoff brackets. So who is facing off against each other? Who is the favorite this year? Obviously, it's the Pittsburgh Penguins. Not really a surprise after the season they just had, but I feel like they're going to be a first-round exit based on that. So here's the playoff bracket, though, anyways. For 2014-15, you have Chicago versus Nashville, Colorado and Anaheim, LA, San Jose, Vancouver and Calgary. And then in the East, you have Pittsburgh and Atlanta, Washington, Tampa, Ottawa, Boston, and the Rangers and the Devils. Interesting. So we could get an actual Stanley Cup Finals for 2015, right? So I'm trying to remember. Wait, what was 2015 Cup Finals again? It was Chicago and Tampa Bay. So yeah, we can get a potential actual Cup Finals here, but I think it's a little bit unlikely just because Tampa's playing Washington, but who knows? Maybe that will actually work out. If Atlanta beats Pittsburgh, though, that will be the biggest upset of all time, probably. In terms of the AHL Calder Cup race, in case you guys want to see this too, it's Manitoba, Hamilton, San Antonio, and Lake Erie, Milwaukee, and Texas, Grand Rapids, Rockford, and then in the Eastern Conference, you got Adirondack and Bridgeport, Hartford and Norfolk, Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, and Syracuse, and our Springfield Falcons will take on the Portland friggin', what is it friggin' called now? Oh no, 2E's gonna kill me. The Portland Pirates, that's what I want to say. My brain all of a sudden just went scramble mode because I really got no sleep last night, hardly, but oh well. Okay, so there is that. Let's find out now about the Stanley Cup champions. Who is it going to be in 2015? Hopefully we get somewhat realistic results because it's always kind of fun when it's realistic, but if we get somebody surprising, that'd be kind of cool too. So, will it be Chicago, Tampa? Will it be Pittsburgh? Will it be the Rangers? Will it be the Blackhawks randomly winning? It could be the Kings too. There's a lot of good teams this year, so we could be in for a random surprise. And hopefully our AHL team is doing good enough. Let's get Leg One back into the lineup in the AHL because the AHL team actually matters right now because I want them to maybe win a Calder Cup this year. Like I said, a lot of these guys could be in our bottom 6 next season, including Nail Yakubov, which will be interesting to see how he actually simulates if we put him next to a solid playmaker. But who's going to be the Stanley Cup champion for 2015? Drop your predictions. Who do you think? Who do you think? The answer to that should be relatively soon unless our AHL team is going to continue going on. Which I don't know if they just got eliminated because I didn't see any notifications. Never mind. The New York Rangers are the Stanley Cup champions in 2015. So that's kind of a quick turnaround for them because they weren't very good early on. They ended up drafting, Kucherov and stuff like that a couple years ago. And they've built up quite the team since. They still have Henrik Lundqvist and all that. So the Rangers win the Stanley Cup a year later than they went to the finals. So that's not too bad for realism. Obviously, I don't know who they played for the Cup Finals, but there's that. And Milwaukee wins the AHL. So let's take a look at that bracket and see how it played out in terms of the NHL. Did we get a realistic result? The answer is yes, we did. Oh my god, I love my roster build so much, man. I don't know how I get realism like this. Like, I used ChatGPT this year, and I still get realistic friggin' results. This is a year late, but the Rangers played the Kings. This time the Rangers actually win in 7 games. So there's no like historic Alec Martinez play, but that's a quite realistic result too, because Chicago and LA playing each other in the conference finals again. I love that, man. I don't know how my roster build simulates so good. Atlanta did beat Pittsburgh in the first round, so Pittsburgh had a historic season and lost in 6 games to a team that in real life never won a playoff series. So Shout out to the Pittsburgh floppers. They just completely flopped, man. Goddamn. And then in the AHL, in case you guys want to take a look at this, it was Milwaukee and Wilkes-Barre. Milwaukee won in 7 games. Our AHL team got knocked out by the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins in that second round, unfortunately. So there's that. Let's take a look at some stats, though, from that cup-winning New York Rangers team, which it's pretty crazy that the Rangers are already a cup champion, but let's see. Because a few years ago, like I said, they were drafting quite high up. So here's their forwards and here's their stats. So they have Derek Roy on 25 points. You got Gaborik on 24. They did re-sign Gaborik, which was kind of controversial in my opinion. But Nikita Kucherov, really good playoffs for him. Dubinsky on 21 points. Forsberg already won a cup with 19 points in 18 games. He must have been injured a bit. But yeah, he was also another high-up pick. He literally drafted first overall 3 years ago. And then they also drafted first overall 4 years ago. Quick turnaround for the New York Rangers. Mikael Granlund wins the Stanley Cup in his rookie season. You also have Joffrey Lupul, Chris Kreider, Max Afanaganov, Alexander Frolov still there, Chris Kelly. And then from a defensive standpoint, they had Ryan Ellis leading the way, which is kind of surprising. Ryan McDonough up there, Curtis Foster, as well as Michael Del Zotto. Missed a couple games for him too. Mark Stahl, James Wisniewski, who was a trade acquisition, and then Matt Gilroy. Goaltending-wise, Henrik Lundqvist, .919 save percentage. Good to see Henrik Lundqvist with a Stanley Cup on his belt now, though. Because he obviously in real life he never won one. But good to see Hank with one. Because I think at some point he deserved it. Even though it was fun what Pajot did to the Rangers in 2017. That will always be ingrained in my head. Alright, let's take a look at the rest of the awards. So yeah, the Rangers win the Stanley Cup. And then in terms of the President's Trophy, it was Pittsburgh for back-to-back seasons. But they do not win a Stanley Cup in that span. So Pittsburgh and Sidney Crosby starting to choke a little bit here. And then aside from that, individual awards, Malkin won the Art Ross and the Hart. Doughty won the Norris. The Lady Byng going to Malkin as well. Ricard Raquel with the Calder. That's still kind of weird. Gaborik won the Conn Smythe. So, like I said, he controversial re-signing because obviously Kucherov should be the top-line guy, but they managed to do it, and Gaborik managed to be that force to win them the Stanley Cup. So, shout out to Gaborik. Also, the Kings could have won their second cup in 3 years, but they did not get it done. Fleury did win the Vezina. We'll see if he goes anywhere this offseason. Lundqvist won the Jennings. Girardi wins the Bill Masterton. San Jose's head coach, Jack Adams. Okay. Kopitar won a Selke again for the second consecutive year. Malkin the Lindsay, and Malkin the Richard. So crazy year for Malkin, but he lost in the first round. Aside from that, in the AHL, Pat Maroon winning some awards. Some guy named Lidstrom. Derek Pouliot was the best rookie defenseman, and he was traded too, which is crazy. Some guy named Powell. Scott Darling, the best goalie in the AHL. Rostislav Olish won the MVP of the Calder Cup playoffs. All right. Some guy named Corvo. Some guy named Keaton. Some guy named Semyonov. A lot of generated guys in the minors at the moment. All right, so that is the stats and all that. Let's find out where we're drafting this year and see if we have some lottery luck on our side. Probably not going to move up too much if we do. And the answer is we're going to bounce back, actually. We do not stay at 8. We move back to 9, which kind of sucks in a way, but it's not a huge issue. Probably could still find a good player there, or we can move up with some of the picks we have as well, or prospects for that matter too. But Phoenix has the first overall pick in 2015, which would have been Connor McDavid. So shout out to the Yotes for getting their franchise player, which is Wong, I think, if I remember right. Detroit gets second overall. Toronto number 3. Minnesota moved from 14 to 4. And then you have St. Louis at 5. All right. So there is that. Aside from that, any crazy retirements this season? Let's take a look at that. The biggest retirement for a forward is going to be Alex Kovalev with Minnesota at the age of 42. And Martin St. Louis retires with the wrong New York team, because if he would have retired now, he would have retired with the Rangers and won the Cup again. But he retires with the Islanders at 40 years old, so salute to Martin St. Louis. Saku Koivu also retires. Zubris does. Naslem retires back in Vancouver, where he probably belongs. Rolston, Forsberg, yeah, a lot of good players retiring this year. Solani. This is a pretty big retirement class. So a lot of the guys I made are starting to dwindle. There's still a lot more of them, but a lot of the big names are coming off the board a bit. Hey, Matt Cook already retired. That's good to see. He dropped off a lot faster in this than in real life, which is good to see. Because at least he never stomped on Erik Karlsson's Achilles in this universe. Friggin' dude. Or he didn't even injure Mark Savard by now? Actually, no, he would have injured Mark Savard, actually, because that happened before this franchise mode, technically. That's why I made Mark Savard have really bad durability and all that. But Chris Pronger's the best defenseman to retire. Mark Streit retires. Zdeno Chara retires at 38. Damn. Chara retiring already is kind of surprising. Philip Kuba, a lot of other good dudes, though, too. Wade Redden. I don't know. Wonder if there's any big goalies to retire. Damn, Jonas Frogen retired at 34. That's faster than I expected him to drop off. Okay. Goalies, though. Thomas Vokoun retires a little bit early, as well as Ty Conklin. Nikolai Habibulin has retired as a Calgary Flames, so salute to the Bull and Wall. Thank you for your time playing in Edmonton. Marty Turco also retires, and Jason LaBarbera. All right. So a pretty big retirement class, but nothing like that's going to really impact us. We did lose a coach, though, in Neuwirth, which is probably a goalie coach, but tough to say. Springfield did not lose anybody, so that's good. All right. Final few things we got to do to wrap up this episode is obviously taking a look at that draft class, the contract situation, and the progress reports. So we'll start with the progress reports. Any really good growth from our prospects this season. So NHL-wise, we're obviously getting growth from Cameron and McKinnon, which is nice. Nyquist too, to Foley. So our top six is definitely going to look nicer and nicer every single season. Jakumov's also got a lot of growth, but he is still listed as a third-line scoring forward, and he's on a lot of statistical growth. So we got to be very careful not to overpay on him. But his offensive awareness has gotten drastically better because of statistical growth. So he should simulate really good if we keep him in the top six. Eberle obviously getting some growth as well. Guys like Kadri not really getting much growth. Like I said, I could let him go to free agency or we could qualify him. It's tough to say. There's definitely a lot of guys that could replace him though in the AHL, including Yakupov. Hagelin's probably gone. Marcoux is still only an 80 overall listed as a depth forward, but I feel like he's a lot better than that. So we'll obviously still hold into him. Burmistrov is getting a decent chunk of growth. How much is it though? A lot of statistical on him. So he's probably one of these guys that might be only like a 79, which is unfortunate, because I thought he'd get a lot more growth. Abdelkader got some growth, but we don't know if we'll hold on to him or not. Probably not. Fada is a 78 at 22, so George Fada is pretty much ready for the NHL for next year, so that's quite exciting. Probably plays on like our third line, maybe our fourth line to start off the year. But since we brought him in from the Kings, he's been getting better every year too, so this is an exciting player to bring into the NHL, especially with his potential. In terms of defensemen, Justin Falk's getting some growth, same with Petrie. How long do we have Petrie signed for even? I don't even remember. I can't even take a look on the screen right now. We'll have to take a look at that in the contract situation if I remember. Holinka's getting some growth. Savard kind of not getting really that much growth. Actually, no, he's getting some to puck control. But yeah, he's not a hugely important player to hold on to long term. And then there's Zherdev, who is getting a little bit of growth as well to his puck control. In terms of our goalies, actually, Vasilevsky jumped to an 87 overall. Holy moly. All right. And it's a lot of natural growth. So, yeah, we're going to have to pay some big bucks to Vasilevsky here soon, too, which is exciting. Danielson's listed as a starting goalie already. That's not great. I was kind of hoping he'd stay a backup for now, but we might have to think about trading him. I don't know if it's worth it running two starting elite goalie kind of guys. We could do it for a couple more seasons, but damn. These guys are both pretty good already. So our goalie situation might be way too good next season. Aside from that, in the system, Tuomainen's up to a 71. Dorset's still at 56. Defensive prospect-wise, Pareko's up to a 73 at 21. Still kind of lower than expected. Dolan 72 at 20 is not bad. Mackey is 71 at 20. And he's obviously going to be AHL bound next season. Tremblay is 70 at 19. Looks like we're getting some solid growth from some guys, but other guys' growth are really not that evident. I mean, Rodriguez is growing, but Gagliardi's a 69 at 23. He is only a low 4, though. Esposito, nice. That's good to see. Santiago Esposito, one of our favorite prospects, the enforcer. He's getting growth, which is nice. Love to see it. Aside from that, our forward prospect, Nishushkin's up to a 77, literally listed as a fourth liner, so Val should make our lineup next year, potentially also on that fourth line with Fada. So we might have too many good players almost in a way. Yakupov's listed as a depth forward. I would like to play him in the NHL because he's been a solid AHLer so far. Had a good playoffs too. So yeah, we might have too many players probably that can make it next season. Like even Andrew Shaw is a fourth liner, so we might have to think about trading some of these guys because we can't get them into our lineup or else they might complain. Left wing side of things, Barchi's still a 77. He's still a depth forward as well. Maybe he should be playing. Lati, Payarvi, and McGinn are all minor checking forwards, so they could probably stay a little bit longer in the AHL. Obergauer got some good growth for a low 6, which is nice. Holden's up to a 71 at 20. I like that. Nelson 67 at 19. Lamoureux's 66 at 20. Not the best. Rose's 64 at 22 is pretty bad for a medium elite prospect. I think we got to capitalize on this guy's value and trade him away. I know he's a medium elite prospect, but being 22 years old and only at 64, he's not very good. Centers, Boone Jenner's ready for the NHL as well. So another guy that could play in that bottom 6 next season. So yeah, we definitely have to part ways with some people. Hodgson's a penny free agent. We'll probably let him walk. Lowry, 65 at 19, is getting closer to AHL ready. Nice. And that's pretty much it on that side of things. All right. Final few things we got to take a look at. Let's take a look at the contract situation just so we could see. So first and foremost, how long is Petrie signed for? Did I sign him again for? 1, 2, 3, 4 more years, or 3 more years after the season. Okay. That's not bad actually. But a lot of other defensemen are going to need contracts soon. But what I want to take a look at is the all-expiring players. So, in terms of our goalies, these are the guys up for renewal. It's just Tuomainen as an RFA. Easy bring him back. Defensively, Falk is the big RFA defenseman. He does not want an extension, which does not make sense, but doesn't like our organizational interest right now. But we should probably try and bring him back on a multi-year deal at this point. Aside from that, we have Plant, who's a UFA. The rest of these guys are almost all RFAs, so pretty easy to bring back most defensemen. But the forwards, this is the interesting one because we have a log jam. So Toffoli wants a contract extension, and we probably have to pay him long-term at least. Yeah, we can probably get him on like a 3 to 4 year deal. So it'd be kind of like a trial run, kind of like Nyquist, for instance. We'll definitely be letting go of Crombeen. I don't know how much money I would spend on him just to hold him onto him as cap whale, but we might not need him. Fada is also an RFA, and he's going to want a 2-way deal still at this point, which is kind of surprising, but we'll obviously be using him as an NHLer this upcoming season. Left wing side of things, Barchi is also probably wanting a 2-way. Yeah, still wants a 2-way, but could be in the NHL next season. Reddick's is a UFA, so he could be gone. We hold on to Payarvi maybe a bit longer. Holden's AHL bound. Nelson probably gets signed. And then Rosa probably gets signed too because of his potential, but he's still a guy who would probably capitalize on his value if possible. Kadri's an RFA. I don't know if I'll hold on to Nazem Kadri at this point. He doesn't want a lot, but we don't have a lot of guys, or we don't have a lot of roster room for all the guys in the AHL. Markou's an RFA. I wouldn't mind signing Marcoux kind of long term if he wants to. Yeah, we might be able to get Marcoux on like an 8-year deal as a bottom 6 option if we really want to. I mean, I do like the guy a lot as a penalty killer. I think he's an elite short-handed player. Obviously, he'll have work to do offensively, but he's pretty good. Riley Nash, probably let him go. Hodgson's a pending RFA. We probably let him go. And Lander, we could probably let him go or just play him in the AHL. Doesn't really matter too much. But yeah, basically most of these contracts, I think we'll probably let go of a lot of the UFAs. RFAs will probably hold on to most. But we do need to free up some contract space as well, which is going to be kind of tough. So we probably have to trade away a lot of our random prospects in the AHL at the moment that are signed that we might not use because basically there's going to be an internal competition between guys like Yakupov, Nishushkin, Barchi, Shaw. I think Boone Jenner was one of them as well, right? If we go down to here, let's just go to forwards. Yeah, Boone Jenner, Burmistrov even still. Fada, Marcoux, like there's a lot of guys competing in that bottom 6, so we probably have to think about trading some of them to kind of give us a better roster in a sense. So with that said, I think the last thing we got to do is take a look at the draft class. So first and foremost, the draft board. We have a lot of picks in this year's draft. I don't know how good of a draft it is, but we do have the 9th overall selection. We have also a total of 2 second-round picks, 3 third-rounders, 2 fourths, and a 5th, 6th, and 7th. If there's not any crazy steals, I might just trade away a lot of the later picks, but we could still try and move up with our 3rd and 2nds to get higher than 9th in the first round if there's something worth taking. So don't count us out from moving up unless there's something not great there, but let's see what we got for this draft. So since we're drafting 9th overall, is there anything crazy around that point? There is Bill Johnston. Guaranteed medium 6 center. Don't really need forward prospects. I'd prefer a defenseman like Climby probably over him, but we might have to move up a spot. Aside from that, there's Metropolit. We don't know anything about him though, which is not great. Maybe I forgot to bring back a scout though, because he's unknown, which is kind of strange. Another forward prospect, don't need. Another forward prospect. Ooh, this guy's 1 year out. That's an interesting one. I don't really need forward prospects, but I mean 1 year out kind of always intrigues me. Ooh, this guy's good too. This guy's NHL ready. Alright, so these two guys are going to be probably medium 6s, but with high overalls. But I'd probably prefer a defenseman that's got that type of overall if there is any, which I'm not too sure if that is the case. Strudwick is 2 years out. He's pretty solid too. Is there any good defenseman though? Kachuk. Oh, what's his name? Kenny Kachuk. I don't feel like this is a good draft for defenseman, which kind of sucks because that's more what we need. Rui Dell. Not really. Weirkosh. Yeah, there's not really a ton of good defensemen unless we move up. So we could basically get ourselves a good forward here if we want to, but there's already so much competition that it's not really worth it. So if we were to move up in the draft, there's literally no defenseman really before our spot other than Climby. So it's kind of one of the worst drafts possible for us because we need defensive prospects and there's not really anybody supposed to go super high up. And I don't know if we're going to be able to get ourselves a good defensive prospect here. Let's just take a look. Ooh. Is that the thing? Okay, maybe not. Never mind. There's some random steals like Terrell Moss, but he's not supposed to go that early. We could easily get that guy 2nd round if we use some of our 2nd rounders to move up a couple spots. Terrell Moss is interesting as a Norwegian because he's almost NHL ready. See, that's the type of player we need to look out for. Basically, 2 years out maybe on that guy. A lot of these other guys are 3 years out still. So yeah, it's still a weak draft class for defense, but that one guy might be the best defenseman in the draft. There's a gem here too, but So I think the guy we'd be looking for, Phi also could be a low lead, but the guy we're probably looking to take as a defenseman is going to be Terrell Moss. And in early first round, we could take a forward and then trade him for a defenseman at some point, but we could also try and move up for Climby. But I think probably the play is to take Moss early 2nd rounder if we could get it. And then we could probably just take one of those top 6 forwards as our other pick. Aside from that, there is some steals. There's a goalie prospect that's 19. Ooh, high overall too. We'll pin him in case. I don't know if I really need more goalie prospects though. There could be some random elite defenseman, but it's really tough to tell at this point. Any low elite steals? There is that Marcoux low elite defenseman that we had pinned. I forgot about that. He's 20 years old, but 5 years out, but we still probably take him. There's that Phi guy. There's not really a lot of guaranteed low elites though. So yeah, this might be a weak draft class. So maybe we trade some of our picks this year for next year's draft or future years, but I'm glad we don't really have a super high up pick this year because it's probably not the best class on paper. So anyways, guys, that's going to do it for this episode of Edmonton Oilers Throwback 2010 Franchise Mode. So in next episode, we will take it to the 2015 offseason. We'll see what we end up doing. Obviously, maintaining the roster is pretty much the main thing. A lot of the guys in the bottom 6, though, obviously will get reworked for guys in the AHL. And we're going to have to make some tough decisions with prospects like guys like Andrew Shaw. If we can't get him into the NHL, do we just flip him because we can't get him into the NHL and he's probably too good for the AHL? stuff like that. So anything down below, and I'll see you guys next time.